Hey everyone, so today's video is a response to one of the comments that was left in one of my videos. The comment comes from Video at Verukas, who asked me to share some of my lighting and color tips. He referred to my 30-second video that I submitted to the iClone lip sync animation contest, and he paid me the biggest compliment you can pay a 3D animator. He said that the look was very reminiscent of a Pixar style movie. So today I'm going to share with you guys what I did to achieve a look similar to that. Now I have to step back and say firstly, thanks for the massive compliment, Video at Verukas. I don't think it was done intentionally. And in fact, after I saw the comment, I did a bit of research just to find out how Disney Pixar does get their videos to have this certain look. Obviously, we know it to be various hues of color, very bright, very warm, very saturated. So I did some research to see what I could find out in terms of how they actually managed to pull off this kind of look. So I'll be sharing some of those tips and some of the discoveries with you guys as I talk you guys through how I got my video to sort of look very similar to that. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Before I get into the actual tutorial, I just want to point out to those of you who didn't know that lighting and color is in fact a science I know almost nothing about. In my search for more knowledge on color and lighting in animation itself, I actually came across some videos from Dominic Glynn, who is literally a color scientist at Pixar. Dominic does a few fascinating talks on the science of color. And there's a lot more science to it, but essentially we have a red, green and blue receptor or RGB receptors in our eyes. And as our brain mixes these three colors, that's how we actually see the millions of colors that we do. It's this knowledge that became the basis for our TV monitors and screens today. Hence the RGB wheel, which we use regularly. If you're into editing or color correcting, you'll be familiar with the RGB wheel. The other interesting thing is that this RGB wheel is in fact not a 2D shape but a 3D shape, so that we can not only see the hue and the saturation of the color, but we can also see the value or the lightness and the darkness of each color. Over and above Dominique, I also want to thank Danielle Feinberg and Sharon Callahan, who are both DOPs or directors of photography for lighting at Pixar. I found some interesting videos where each of them spoke through specific Pixar movies and how they created the mood, the ambience and the look for each of these movies. I found it very helpful. So what I did was I actually created a YouTube playlist inside my YouTube channel with all of these videos I referred to and sort of became my research material. You're more than welcome to check them out if you feel so inclined. The last thing I want to share around the theory of lighting and color before we move on to the actual tutorial is that it's important to remember that lighting and color does more than affect the appearance of your actual movie. It creates a mood, it creates an emotion. And in fact, in animated movies, it actually creates a more believable feel if your lighting and color is done correctly. It also helps to tell your story the same way that your facial animation, your body animation, your dialogue and your music does. It's like Bill Cohn, one of the production designers at Pixar, puts it. He says,
"Color's a sensation."
I love that. Color creates a sensation. So if you want to create a sensation, a feel or a mood, then use the right color. After that rather long introduction, let's jump into the tutorial. So for this particular scene, we have a father and a daughter having a very light-hearted conversation. Immediately I'm thinking in terms of mood, something that's warm, something where they're both comfortable. So colors that come to mind immediately is a yellow to orange tinge. So I'll use that wherever possible to create this particular mood and atmosphere. Okay, so first things first, let's switch off all the lights in this particular scene and get the scene to black, because as the Lego Batman puts it,
black. All important movies start with a black screen.
Okay, so our screen is not exactly 100% black, but that's mainly because I've added some glow texture maps to some of my props. As you can see, the lamp has a glow texture map to it, as well as the light bulbs, and then of course my laptop as well. And for those of you who don't know how to actually add a glow map to your object, I can show you that very quickly. So the first thing I do is I go to the base texture to see what that looks like, and I actually added this particular screen onto the texture myself. I Google searched a Excel spreadsheet page, screenshot it, and then I added it onto this particular section of the map just to have something to show on the screen. And then what I did was I actually duplicated this particular texture map, focusing on the area where the screen is. And in my particular case, I added a blue color to the screen. You can obviously add any color you want to, but I wanted the laptop to give sort of a blue glow in this particular case. So this is what the laptop looks like without the glow texture. And this is what it looks like with the glow texture. I did the same thing with the lamp in the background as well, and these textures can be edited with any photo animating software. For me, I use Sketchbook, because it's free. And this is what the glow map looks like for the lamp. As you can see, it's giving off sort of a white light, but if you wanted to change it, you could change it as well. I'm actually going to just give it sort of a more yellowy tinge to create a more warm feeling. Which leads us to the next step, which is to add in your lights. And here we will take care of the natural light coming through the windows, as well as the artificial lights coming through the lamps. So I usually start with the dimmest lights and work my way to the brighter lights. So from a natural light perspective, I'm going to start off with the light in the furthest room, which is the lounge. So I found that the rectangular light inside Unreal actually gives the best representation of a window light. All you gotta do is place it and angle it to make it look like it's coming through the window. So to give my scene a more Disney Pixar feel, I decided to add some color to give it some pop. So I tried a few colors. I tried pink, green, I tried some blue to see how a coal feeling would look, and as well as red, and I ended up with something closer to a maroon color, which I felt would create a nice backdrop for my female actress. And the other important thing that I learned is that no light can be placed without substantiating it. So in other words, you cannot put a light into a scene unless you can prove there's a reason for it to be there. So for me to get a maroon light, I needed to change the color of my curtains so that it looks like the curtains is actually reflecting the maroon light through the windows, which makes it look more believable. I used the rectangular light for all of my windows in the distance, as well as the sliding glass door. So for my lamp lights, I dragged and dropped point lights into my scene and placed it near or inside the lamp itself. Then I changed the color to a light yellow color, again just to create that warmth that I wanted in this particular scene. Then I did the same thing with the lamp light behind my main character, and I felt that the lamp light reflecting on the wall, the face brick wall, would give it a bit more depth, and I think it turned out pretty cool. And this led me to step number 4, which is where I add my main lights into the scene. So with all my secondary or minor lights all set up, I now move on to my main lights. So for anybody who's ever done any research on lighting, you'd know that there are basically 3 types of lights required to light a scene. The main one, or the big one, is what they refer to as a key light. Now in my particular scene, the key light will be on the left hand side of the character, coming through the big window closest to him. Then, to prevent the dark shadows that comes from having a light on the one side of the character only, you'd need to add a second light, which is referred to as the side light. This light wouldn't have as strong a diffuse as the main light, and it's there just to hide that very, very harsh shadows. And then of course the third light that's also important is the backlight. In my opinion, it's probably one of the most important lights that often get forgotten, because it's the backlight that actually separates your character from the backdrop. In my case, I decided to go with a blue light as the backlight, just to give a rim around the character, to give the scene a more 3D feel. And again, the blue light also helps with giving a bit more color, giving something closer to a Disney Pixar.
That is punny.
If you find yourself in a situation where the shadows being cast by the light is very dark, the chances are it's probably caused by the ray tracing shadows. So what you need to do is find the respective light, click on it, and then scroll down under the details to cast ray tracing shadows, and then just uncheck the tick box and you'll see the difference. So this is what it looks like with the ray trace shadows on, and this is what it looks like with the ray trace shadows off. So what I did, I clicked mine off because I felt that the shadows were way too harsh. And this leads us to our final step, which is to add in our exponential and our atmospheric fog. And I believe this is where the true magic actually happens. Most Unreal projects will already have an atmospheric fog inside the outliner, but if you can't find it, you can add it by searching on the left hand side and punching in atmospheric, and you'll see it popping up. You can drag and drop it into the scene. And I would do the same thing with the exponential height fog that you can also find by searching on the bar on the left hand side on top. So the atmospheric fog works very well on the outside, but inside a room I've discovered that the exponential height fog actually gives you a better effect. So once you've added your exponential height fog into your scene, the details that I normally mess around with would be the fog density, which is the main one. And you'll very quickly discover that it's actually quite sensitive. So a 0.05, for example, will actually give you quite a heavy fog, which is sort of what I aim for. If I really don't want it to be that dense, you could try 0.02. And then the other element that I mess around with would be the fog height fall off. And for me, I found that 0.2 works quite well. And then the other big one is of course the color of the fog, and again going back to the look and feel that I originally wanted. It was a warmer feel, so I changed my fog in scattering color to a light yellow color, which sort of gives you that nice warm ambiance, which I think worked quite well in the scene. And in fact, I think that's probably the one element that gave my look and feel that Disney Pixar look. So yeah, the secret, if you want to know what gives you that look, would be the exponential height fog. And there you go, our lighting and our atmosphere is ready. All that's left for us to do now is to add all of this into our sequencer, to record our sequence, and then of course to render our video. So over and above the lighting and the actual atmosphere, the other thing that also helps to give a more cinematic or a more Disney Pixar look is to mess around with the camera's aperture and the focal length, especially when you got a close-up shot like I have here. So for example, I would work with a 40 focal length and an aperture of about 2.8 to get a more deeper depth of field in my particular scene. This always remains personal preference, but I've also discovered that the aspect ratio and the resolution actually also help enhance the look and the feel of your actual video or your movie. So I usually use an aspect ratio of 2.35 and a resolution of 4096 by 1743 as opposed to the normal 1920 by 1080 that most people use. And this gives me a nice long shot. And if you're actually framing it correctly, it also looks kind of cinematic, especially if you're moving the camera around. Again, it's personal preference, but that's usually the resolution and the aspect ratio I use to get the look that I have. And that's it for today's video. I hope that you found something I mentioned useful. As I'm going to be saying goodbye, I'm going to be playing out with the final render. Enjoy. Until next time.
Emma, I'm getting worried. Is your sister running late this morning? What's so funny?
Running late? That's actually quite funny.
Oh, that is punny.
Good one, Dad. How was your breakfast? Did the eggs taste okay? I see you didn't finish it.
It was perfect. Thanks, sweetie. I'm just not that hungry this morning. I wonder where she is.